equipment here, but I think we're ready to roll here. I'm just going to give it a sec for people to join. In the meantime, just some quick housekeeping rules. We want these sessions to be as interactive as they possibly can be. Oh, I'm getting a signal to stop.
Do you want to just repeat that?
Do we have some people on?
Not yet. It just takes a second for the stream to actually connect. So.
Okay, gotcha. Why don't we wait until we have a few people on in that case?
Yeah, because it takes a while for it to go on page.
You can check if you tap on the microphone, you should see on that black one. Hey everyone, how's it going? I am Graham Smith. I'm running for the Board of Supervisors here in San Bernardino County's 3rd District. Apologies for the slightly late start. We had some audio issues on our end. We're just going to give it a couple minutes to give a few minutes for some people to join, and then we'll get going. In the meantime, we want to make these sessions as interactive as we possibly can. So as you have questions and comments, please just drop them in the chat and we will answer them as we go through. So we'll just give it another minute or so and then we'll kick off. Okay, everyone, welcome to our virtual town hall. This is our next one for the mountain regions. Obviously, this is an important one for me, actually living up here in the San Bernardino Mountains. But wherever you're joining from tonight, I want to let you know we're here for the entire district. And one thing we found is it's been a really interesting discussion when we have people from multiple parts of District 3, just because it's such a huge district. It's so big. It's so varied, and I think it's really important for residents in the mountain communities to hear about some of the really distinct needs that residents in the desert communities have, as for instance, because even though they're different, we're all in this together. And a huge part of the reason I'm running is to make sure that the county is doing the best job it possibly can to take care of all of us residents across the many varied parts of San Bernardino County's 3rd District. So I have a presentation that we tend to run through, but these sessions are the most fun and the most engaging if we make them as interactive as possible. So as we go through, please just drop through whatever questions and comments you have in the chat. We can make this as structured or as freeform as people would like. So I can kick off with a presentation, and then as we get some people commenting in the chat, we'll turn over to that.
Yeah, so hi everybody, my name is Mark. I'm Graham's campaign manager. I'm running things behind the camera. One thing that would be great is just if you do join, if you can just drop into the chat where you're joining us from. That way we can kind of tailor the conversation a little bit more specifically. I know tonight is the mountain session, but we've had people from all over District 3 joining all of our sessions, and even if you are in the mountains, we talk a lot about how the problems that people face in different regions are different, really different. So even people in Crestline do not have the same problems as people in Running Springs or Green Valley Lake or wherever. So just drop in the chat where you're from so we can tailor the conversation. Also, the reason we started late, we were having a little bit of an issue with our microphones. So if you have any audio problems, please let us know, and we'll fix that because we want to make sure everyone can hear us really, really well.
Indeed, and if you're joining from the mountain regions tonight, it's a snowy, cold, windy evening. The wind is whipping here in Sky Forest. So if you lose us momentarily because the power goes out, don't worry. We are fortunate enough to have a backup generator, so we'll be on in 30 seconds or so.
Of course we have a generator. We live in the mountains.
We're prepared.
We are prepared. Yeah, if the power does go out, we will restart the stream as quickly as possible. If depending on what platform you're on, you may have to just sort of refresh the page and join again.
Yeah, but we will be back.
We will be back.
Okay, so should we kick over to the presentation unless anyone's got any initial questions right off the bat?
No, but I'm going to keep repeating this, and I know you will too. Any questions, any topics that you want us to talk about? This presentation is really just here to give us kind of like a foundation of a conversation, but we are quite happy to throw it out and just talk about whatever you guys want. So.
Absolutely, yeah. So we'll get going, and then just stop us anytime. So if you don't know me already, my name is Graham Smith. I'm a resident here in Sky Forest. Just some background on me. The house I'm sitting in this evening, my grandparents built 50 years ago, so I've had a lifelong connection to the mountain regions of San Bernardino County. I lived here full time for the last 4 years. You might know me from my involvement in Snowmageddon last year when we all got buried in our houses. I got really involved in the local community, really tried to step up and get us all some more attention and some resources. And that's really the nexus of my whole campaign here for county supervisor. But I want to let you know there's a lot more to me than just the experience I had last winter. And the way I actually like to start this presentation off is by talking about what a county supervisor actually does.
Yeah, we actually had a question from Margaret saying, what does a supervisor do? So,
oh, perfect. Here, perfect timing.
Great
Here we
question,
go.
Margaret.
Because I'm really conscious this is neither a household name nor a sexy position on the ballot. And I will admit to you, until a year ago when I got really involved, I didn't even know what a county supervisor did. But as I've learned what the roles and responsibilities are, I've realized this is a job I will do really, really well. And I'll tell you why that's the case. So the four things I like to talk about in terms of high-level roles here are approving the budget. So if you didn't know, San Bernardino County has about a $10 billion annual budget. It's a pretty big number, so the person sitting in this seat has got to have a lot of confidence dealing with numbers of that size and scale. Allocating resources. A huge part of this job is taking that $10 billion budget and figuring out what to do with it. This county has dozens of departments that sit within it, and it's really important that the Board of Supervisors has some financial acumen to know which of these departments needs resources, what resources they'll need to make life better for everybody. So resource allocation is a big part of this role. Approving legislation, I actually think this is more a matter of refining legislation that comes down from the state of California and the federal government. A lot of what happens is, say, the California legislature will pass some kind of piece of legislation, and it's kind of left purposely vague to give counties and cities the opportunity to implement it in a way that works for them. So a big part of this job is responding to things quickly, making sure you know what the requirements of various parts of this county are, what residents actually want, and figuring out how to implement legislation in a way that works for them. Sometimes these are things that at face value seem really boring, like trash collection, but are actually really important. So we've been talking to a lot of residents in the desert regions of the district, as for instance, who have been really impacted by some of the recent changes to trash collection regulations. These have to do with where you're separating organic waste from regular trash. Some people are now having to drive 40 minutes just to drop off food, and they're like, what is going on? So even though it sounds kind of boring, it's actually really important because it impacts people's lives in a pretty meaningful way. Last but certainly not least is securing investment. So of that $10 billion annual budget, over a third of it comes from reimbursements from the state of California and the federal government. So the person sitting in this seat needs to know how to go to these governments, lobby for more resources, and also needs to be able to work with the huge number of private industries and companies that we have in this district to attract them to come to San Bernardino County to do business. So that's the kind of whistle-stop tour of what the roles and responsibilities are. Okay, so next I'm going to talk about I'll tell you later about who I am as a person, but in terms of my professional background, I want to talk a little bit about the skills I have to bring to the table here, because I think they're really important and they're really relevant. And I actually think they're a lot more relevant to this role than a career spent in politics.
Yeah, and Gilbert, I see your question, and I'm going to get Graham to answer that at the end of this slide, because I think it kind of continues nicely on from that.
Got it. So I've had two phases to my career. Most of it was spent in what I call big finance, and then in the last 5 years, I'm working on some small businesses. So some details on those. I've worked for two big companies in my professional life. The first one was called Lehman Brothers. The second one was called Ares Management. And what I did in my last job was basically go out to a bunch of institutions, raise money from them to put it in a company investment fund, and then figure out how to allocate that money across a bunch of different private companies to help them grow, create jobs, and create economic opportunity. I was what was called a generalist, which meant I looked at companies across all different kinds of sectors. And I think it's really relevant to a lot of the financial aspects of this job because, again, going back to that previous page, taking a $10 billion budget, figuring out how to allocate it across these different county departments, this is a slightly different flavor of exactly the thing that I spent 15 years doing. This is a really core skill set of mine and something I can do really well. So actually, I spend a lot of time looking at our county's budget, and really a core skill set of mine is looking at all these various county departments, figuring out what makes them work and what kind of resources would make them work better. So it's a really, really core part of what I know how to do. But I decided I didn't want to do corporate work my entire life, so I left that job about 5 years ago, and then I spent the time until now working on a couple of startups. So one was an online health and fitness business, another was a topical skincare brand, and really through those experiences, I learned just how hard it is to be a small business owner and also how hard it is to be a small business owner here in San Bernardino County. And especially if you're joining from the mountains or a rural area, I think you'll probably know what I'm talking about. Whether you own a small business yourself or you know someone who does, you know the county makes it really, really hard. And this is something I'm really focused on addressing if I get elected to this position. So do we want to go to Gilbert's question now? You want me to run through this slide? What's the best flow here?
No, I think we should answer this question now. So Gilbert's question is, what experience do you have with community service, board of directors, or serving? Looking for qualifications. And I think that's a couple of things you can talk about this, but one that really kind of links into the whole being on board of directors with the investment and stuff.
Yeah. So in terms of community service, if you remember the work I did in the winter storms last year, and it's the most recent and most helpful example of how I've stepped up for my community. I got really involved. I developed a relationship with Supervisor Rao, who I'm now running against, and did my small part to increase the visibility for all of us, get us some more resources, and get us better communication. I can talk for a long time about the various shortcomings and failures across a bunch of different county departments. This was the problem that I tried to solve, and I think I did it as well as I possibly could. And that was the first time that I'd really stepped up for my local community here, and I really enjoyed the community service aspect of it. And the winter storm experience for me is really the genesis of my campaign. That's what really got me started thinking about it. In terms of board seats, I've actually got a lot of experience here. So I talked about how my previous job was raising money and investing money. That was a very active role. It wasn't like I was taking money, investing it in some kind of publicly traded stock. What we would do is we'd take a really big investment in a private company and get really involved. So I would sit on company boards of directors. I'd work with CEOs, CFOs, provide insight, provide advice, and provide challenge. And I do that to, again, increase economic opportunity, create jobs, and generally help companies grow. I think another really important aspect to that role is ultimately sometimes you'll run through some tough times. It's not like you get everything right all the time. And a big part of that job was working with people, working with companies, to get them through tough times and to get through the other end and to see the light at the end of the tunnel. So this would be really, really intense involvement, getting really involved in the day-to-day operations of companies. Again, working alongside CEOs, CFOs. So really, in terms of board experience, I have a lot, and I would argue it's a lot more relevant than just political experience because, again, as I look through this county's budget, figuring out where to allocate the county's budget and resources across these various departments. This is something that I've spent a professional career doing and something that I do really, really well.
I think there's also a point to make here about the the breadth of county departments. So there's dozens of county departments, all of which have, different specialties, and they cover a whole host of things from like transport to childcare to law enforcement to, public works and planning and development and all that kind of stuff. Like the boards that you sat on, did they have the breadth of scope that the county departments have as well?
Yeah, so I kind of touched on it before when I said what I used to do was what's called generalist investing, which meant looking at companies in all kinds of different sectors. So I tried to make a list the other day of the number of sectors that I've invested in. I got up to like over 40 and I stopped counting. And really one of the core skill sets of my professional career is being presented with something. So let's pick a random department in this county's budget. Project and facilities management, right? I'm not going to tell you I'm an expert in project and facilities management today, but I might get a memo for a company that did something similar, and then I'd have a few days, a few weeks to really study it, become an expert, figure out what made it tick, what made it work, and ultimately what it would need to work better. So I don't think there's anyone who can credibly say that they know everything about every one of these departments, because if they do, quite frankly, they're lying to you. I think what's way more important is being able to open a report like this, figure out what makes it work, talk to the people who run a department like this, figure out what they need to do their job better, and then decide, okay, of that county's $10 billion budget, how much should go to project and facilities management? Are they getting enough? Are they getting too much? What do they need to do their job the best? That's the core skill set I have that I can bring to the table here. And let me know if that doesn't answer your question. Please let me know, and I can refine and expand.
Yeah, I mean, I think one thing, just to very briefly add to that, and obviously I'm going to let you do the talking, but we talk a lot about financial skills and data and analysis and all that kind of stuff, but I think it's important when people hear about your previous career that it wasn't just about numbers, right? There was definitely a heavy people element to it.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Like I said, a big part of my job was going out working with customers, CEOs, investors. Like it's both a hard skill and a soft skill environment. And I think the other thing that's important to touch on too is also how political it was. Because I've had a lot of people say, "Oh, you haven't worked in public politics before. You need political experience to do this job well." I had a lot of political experience through my previous job, even though it wasn't exactly the same flavor of public politics that we're talking about tonight. So getting people on board with something, convincing people to vote for something, voting for things on committees, like this was a core part of the skill set. And some of these investment firms are some of the most highly politicized environments you can possibly imagine. So in terms of being able to do the political side of this job well, that's something I really think I've got covered. So, any other questions in the chat?
Yes. Joan says, voting for you, honest, open communication. I think that's something we've been very diligent about, is not giving fluffy political answers to questions, because who does that help? I think everyone's kind of sick of that. Experience in finance, management, and a local resident who knows the problem of rural areas. Very kind comment. You are young and unspoiled by political cronies. I think that's, yeah.
Full disclosure, so people know, I'm 40, so I've both been around the block in the sense that I've been working for 20 plus years, but hopefully I have enough energy to really go in and shake things up a little bit and do this job well.
Because it's a hard job.
It's a hard job, and it's a full-time job. And I mean, I've gotten to know Supervisor Rao relatively well throughout this whole process and through last winter, and I've seen how hard she has to work. Like this is a full-time job. So I have the energy for it. I have the motivation for it.
Yeah, and the skills.
Yes.
Yeah. Starla says, I'm very interested in you. We need a caring mountain person representing our mountain. Now, District 3 is massive. There's a lot of different communities here, even among the mountains. People in Crestline and people in Big Bear do not have the same problems. I know we have someone on the stream from Sugarloaf, so their problems are not the same as Running Springs.
Exactly.
This does bring up a point about how can one person represent so many different communities?
Correct. So yes, I live in the mountain communities, and I know what it's like to be a local mountain resident. And if you all lived through Snowmageddon with us last year, and if you're dealing with being snowed in your house tonight, you know exactly where we're coming from. So I've talked to plenty of people across various parts of this district who will say, I'm happier from the mountains, or, oh, we need a representative from the desert, we need a representative from a particular city. And the problem with that is we can only have one representative for District 3. I think if we could have more, we should, because District 3 is huge. It's 10,000 square miles. It's got mountains, it's got desert, and it's got cities. And to Mark's point, not all mountain regions are created the same, and not all desert regions are created the same. Everyone's got really specific challenges and a unique perspective on things. So the thing that I will credibly bring to the table here is, even though the challenges are different, I think we all, especially in rural parts of San Bernardino County, we all face different versions of the same problem. And the ultimate problem we all face is a lack of attention. We don't have a representative on the board who's a real champion for rural and unincorporated parts of the county. Everyone's nexus on the board right now is on cities down the mountain. And I think it's easy as a resident of rural San Bernardino to feel like you've slipped through the cracks. So if you're a mountain resident, you know exactly what I feel about, or what you feel like last winter. If you are a resident in the desert complaining about some of these trash regulations that I was just talking about, it's different versions of the same problem, which is that we don't have a county that really takes all of our problems into account. And the thing I've really noticed them doing is trying to implement what I'll call like a one-size-fits-all approach to management of this place. And that is so inappropriate given how big it is and how diverse it is. So yes, of course I'm a mountain resident. I know what life is like up here, and I want to do my job to take care of our mountain communities, but I also want to do the job to take care of our desert communities and to take care of all the residents of District 3. Because one thing I really acknowledge being a resident in a rural part of the county is the challenges that we face are not the same everywhere, and it's going to take someone who's willing to listen, willing to talk to residents, and willing to work together to come up with a solution that works for people in all parts of the district.
This might also, I don't want to go too far off topic, but this might also be a good time to just briefly talk about Max, because one representative for such a diverse range of communities during the campaign, you know, we have the time to travel to all of these places, talk to as many people as we can, and find out what the problems are. But when you actually have the job, at some point you have to sit down at your desk and start fixing those problems, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So you need a way to stay up to date on what's actually happening on the ground, and this is where Max come in, right?
Yeah, so one thing that I've been talking to people about a lot, well, a couple things to touch on here. So if you're a resident in the mountains, you might be aware that we have some MACs or municipal advisory committees up here already. My personal view is they're not widely publicized enough, and I don't think enough people participate.
Do you want to just briefly explain what they're supposed to be?
That's where I was going. Yeah.
Sorry.
So what they're supposed to be is a conduit between residents of specific parts of the county and local county government. And I think it's really important we have as many of them as possible, because this place is so big and it's so diverse and the problems are not the same. We need to have as many touch points across this district as possible to make sure that we understand the problems that residents are facing in all of these various places. So one thing that we've seen this county government do is pull back the number of MACs that have existed historically. We actually have two in the mountain communities here. We have one in the Arrowhead area, one in the Crestline area. But desert residents, as of for instance, are really upset because there used to be one in the Morongo Basin, Joshua Tree area that has been disbanded. I think that's kind of a crazy move, because it's really important we hear from residents across the district. So a couple things for me are, one, I think we need to reinstate and create more MAC committees so that we have touch points across the district. And the other thing I want to do as supervisor is continue engaging in ways like this, where, you know, it's not, I'm not going to lie and say this is as good as being in a room together, but when you have a district that's 10,000 square miles, you can't be in two places at the same time. I at least want to try to find ways to use technology to communicate with people, because it is an effective way to have someone on the phone from Lake Arrowhead, Crestline, and Needles all in the same call together. It doesn't require driving 4 hours from Needles to San Bernardino to attend a Board of Supervisors meeting. And I think another thing that I've talked a lot about throughout this campaign is one thing I'm really committed to here is being open, honest, and transparent with exactly what I'm thinking. And I really want to keep up sessions like this on a regular basis just to keep people around the district apprised of what's going on, why I'm voting the way I am, how I'm thinking about things. Because if I'm really critical of our current government and our current board, I think communication is one area where they really struggle. And that became apparent for all of us in the storms last year. I mean, for me to get the attention of the county, it took 200 people posting the same post on social media at the same time. It shouldn't be that way. It should be much easier to get in touch with your local government, and we should all have a better view on what's actually going on, because right now I don't think we have enough of that.
Okay, so Margaret has a question, and Margaret, I think I have an answer for you. So she says, I was told that it was illegal for us to have a community garden up here. How can we change that? I think you may have been misinformed about that. The only reason I say that is because there is a mountain group up here called the Mountain Provisions Cooperative.
Yep.
And I believe they are working on a community garden right now. So
Yeah.
I am going to drop their website into the chat. And this will take you straight to the page for the Memorial Fund, which is related to the community garden that they're doing. So have a poke around of their website. I'm just dropping it in the chat now. This should appear on both Facebook and YouTube, so if you don't see it, please let me know. And if you're interested in starting a community garden, I suggest you reach out to someone from the Mountain Co-op, because they are going through the process right now. If they haven't already finalized it, I think they've
been doing a lot of work. I don't know the current status of it, right? I mean, I don't think anyone's planting anything right now. There's a couple feet of snow on the ground, so I think everyone's indoors at the moment. But they have made a lot of progress. It's going to be in Twin Peaks, and they are an incredible set of people and would be a great resource to talk about this. But they have made a lot of progress, so I do really encourage you, reach out to them, follow them on social media, and touch base, because they're an incredible set of community members, really actively involved up here.
Yeah, super cool people.
Yeah.
Okay, so we have a comment from Ty. So Ty, you posted a comment to Ty earlier today. He said, I appreciated your answers to my questions regarding incorporation. This, for anyone who is joining, the question was around an organization in Lake Gregory that is a strong proponent of incorporating some of the communities around Lake Gregory and Crestline and Valley of Enchantment and so on and so forth. I'm going to let you address this because you're the candidate, but there is a rumor going around the mountain, which I think we want to address, that you are in favor of incorporation. Let's put that to rest. Talk about that. Okay,
so I want to be really clear about this. The thing I am absolutely in favor of is talking about it, right? Because this isn't an easy decision to make, and this also comes back to having a background in finance. There's a big financial aspect to this decision, because it's not necessarily a matter of deciding whether or not we want it. It's figuring out, do we have the tax base up here? Do we have the revenue and the resources to support an incorporated mountain community? And if we did, would it just be Crestline and the surrounding areas? Would it be all of Crestline, Arrowhead, Running Springs, like all of our mountain communities on this side of the mountain from Big Bear? I think there are a lot of ways we need to slice and dice it and think about it. And one thing I'm in favor of is having the discussion and doing the work to see if it makes sense. Because I know this has been evaluated many times over the years. Historically, it hasn't penciled out in terms of we don't necessarily have the tax base up here to be able to incorporate, because when you incorporate, you have to set up a bunch of local services, and that's both a benefit and a cost, right? We need a police department, a fire department, and of course the benefit to incorporation is you can be more of a master of your own destiny in terms of resources. And as an anecdote, if you compare the storm response last year to these part of our mountain communities, I mean, I'm in Sky Forest here, so close to Lake Arrowhead and Crestline. If you compare the experience we had to Big Bear, the difference was pretty big. And that's due to a bunch of different factors, but one of those is the fact that Big Bear Lake is incorporated. They are a mountain city. They can control their own resources. So I see the idea to want to do it. So I'm not going to claim I have the answers here, because I don't have the math in front of me. I don't know how it looks today. But I think we should continue having the discussion and ultimately seeing what people want.
Yeah.
So it's not an easy or a clear-cut answer. I'm certainly a fan of being more of a master of our own destiny in terms of our mountain communities, controlling more resources, because ultimately residents in a local community are often best placed to figure out where those resources should go. But if it's going to cost us too much money and be a total failure, then we shouldn't do it. So it's a tricky one.
Yeah, I mean, I think, first of all, it's also important to remind everyone that that is not the supervisor's decision, right? So it's not, if,
100%. Yeah,
Yeah.
you shouldn't vote for me because I am for or against incorporation. That's got nothing to do with what I'm trying to do as supervisor. That is a decision that the entire community needs to make together.
totally. I mean, the job of a supervisor in that process is really just to sort of, if the people of that area decide that it's worth doing, it's even feasible, if it's something they want, if the data supports it, maybe it's the job of the supervisor to facilitate that process, but it is
Exactly.
absolutely not their job to endorse it, recommend it, deny it, stop it from happening,
Correct.
none of those things. So, Ty, I know we have heard this rumor before, and he also makes the comment that, incorporate your connection to the mountain might give certain groups an in to the county as supervisor to achieve goals such as incorporation or projects such as the mega church that was trying to be constructed in Sky Forest. First of all, we want to quash any kind of rumors that
Yeah.
are circulating, because that obviously has not come from us. That is not based in fact. So
Correct.
if you hear that rumor repeated, please politely correct that rumor or
Yeah.
direct them to us and tell them, please tell them to come to us directly, because we will be happy to give that answer. It also kind of touches upon a different point, which is that people are generally quite distrustful of politicians' motives and why they're doing things. So do you want to just briefly
Yeah.
talk about that? Because
Well,
I think one thing
yeah.
people don't really understand is that you are not a career politician.
Yeah, there's a few things to talk about here. So one on the point of, if I'm on the board of supervisors, will that be a benefit to the mountain communities? I think it will, but I also think it'll be a benefit to all rural and unincorporated communities across the county and across District 3. And I say that because I am a resident of rural San Bernardino County, and when I talk to residents in the desert, one thing I say is, even though I don't live in the desert, I know what it's like to be a resident in a rural part of the county. I know what it's like to feel like the county doesn't have your back, and I want to be the champion on the board of supervisors for residents, for all residents in the county. I mean, of course, including everyone in cities as well, but I think unless you have the experience living in an area like ours or an area like the desert, it's harder to empathize with what people go through on a daily basis. So I really want to be the representative for the entire district. And then Mark makes a good point, which is, I agree. I'm not trusting the politicians either. I don't think a lot of us are, and I think we're all distrustful for good reasons. We all get talked to by politicians a certain way. I've talked a lot about this throughout this campaign, and one thing I've been trying to show all of you is I want to be really upfront and honest about my motivations and about the agenda that I have on the board of supervisors, rather than just talking in political terms. Because if I just stand up and say a bunch of nebulous political concepts that don't really mean anything, I don't think that's doing anyone any favors. So I've posted a lot of videos about this online, talking about, here's who I am, here's what my agenda is, here's what I'm going to do to try to get it. If it's an agenda you want, then vote for me. If not, then respectfully you can vote for someone else. But I'm not a career politician. I've actually never had any political aspirations. I never expected to be doing this, in part because I didn't really want to. And living here for the last 4 years, seeing how difficult San Bernardino makes life for residents across the county, I've gotten upset. I got really upset last winter in the storms, and I realized I really do have a skill set to bring to the table here that I think is needed in a county like this, that's constantly in the headlines around corruption, financial misconduct. Residents really aren't trusting of their local government here anymore, and it really makes me want to step up and try to do my part. So I think we should all be weary of people who spend their lives kind of climbing up the political ladder, because I don't think they're doing anyone here a good service.
Yeah.
So the thing I will commit to you is being really transparent about what my motivations are, about what I think, and about what I'm here trying to do. And whatever questions you have on any of that, let's have a discussion about those tonight. I mean, we've got until 7:30 technically, and then I've got an interview about an endorsement for a particular group. But I want to have the discussion, and I want to be really clear with you about exactly what I'm here to do.
It's also worth mentioning that, we are aware of problems on the Board of Supervisors level in terms of their close relationships with companies and special interests. And it's something that we're very keen to put a stop to. We're not taking any corporate donations. Our campaign is entirely grassroots because it's very important to Graham. I know that you have a level of independence on the board, so that if any group, whether that's community advocates who want to incorporate Lake Gregory, if it's a construction company or a property developer that wants to build a megachurch in Sky Forest, anybody, like your job as supervisor is to be able to collect all the data, make an informed choice, find out what people actually want, and then have a clear conscience to say yes or no based on that alone, and not your relationship to those people.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So on that note, but I'll always make a plug for this. I hate doing it, but I've got to. If you are at all interested in the campaign, what I've had to say, please do consider donating to the campaign. As Mark mentioned, it's entirely grassroots. It's entirely funded by people like you. If you go through our financial filings, you won't find any corporate money, you won't find a single property developer, and you also won't find any sitting politicians. And that does draw a distinction between us and all the other campaigns.
Yeah.
So really it does rely on people like you.
Okay, so we have some more questions. So
Okay.
Gilbert wants to know, I know they're going to have a lot to say about this. So what political party do you affiliate with?
Yeah.
And I feel like, Gilbert, I hope you'll allow this. I'm going to incorporate the first part of his next question, which is how would you work with those with opposite views? So I feel like those two questions are kind of connected,
no, 100%.
Right?
Okay, so I want to be fully transparent about this. So, well, take a step back. This is a nonpartisan position, and I think it's nonpartisan for a good reason, which is that local government is about delivering better local services to residents. It really shouldn't matter what your political views are. We all have a vested interest in making sure our neighborhoods are safe and making sure our roads are paved, making sure our roads are plowed if we're up here in the mountains. It really shouldn't matter what your higher level political views are for any of that stuff. I am a registered Democrat, and I do have the endorsement of the Democratic Party. Let me tell you, that was not easy to get as a first-time candidate and as a political newcomer. I really had to work for that. I think it's important to say I actually don't like the two-party system in this country, and I think the fighting that we have at the higher levels of government between Democrats and Republicans is really counterproductive to all of us. I think we use a lot of issues that kind of get blown out of proportion to hide the fact that ultimately what most people want out of life is for the government to stay out of their way. People want to just be happy and get on with their everyday life. And I think if we can all agree on some basic stuff, then I really like to leave the whole party preference thing at the door. But it is unfortunately a feature of our society. And it is an important feature of just being able to get stuff done in a campaign like this. So do we get some resources from the Democratic Party? Like we get some, which are helpful. They give us access to some tech platforms like a phone dialer. So if people start getting campaign calls from us over the next few weeks up running to the primary, that is through a platform that the Democratic Party has provided to us. And that platform, if you pay for it yourself, is really expensive. So having some resources like that is kind of helpful.
I think it's important to mention that, like, first of all, we are reaching out to Republican groups. So we have there's a candidate forum with the Lake Arrowhead Women's Republican Group, not next Tuesday, the Tuesday after, the 29th, I believe. And we talk to everybody. We're not just trying to appeal to Democrats, because I think you actually have a lot in common with Republican principles.
Yeah. So I was gonna get onto it, and if people haven't, I actually have a whole video addressing this topic, because we get asked the question a lot. In terms of just so you know what my views are in terms of what the role of government should be, like there are a lot of traditional conservative and Republican principles that I really subscribe to. Like small government, let's not waste money, financial conservatism, like get out of my way. Like those are all things that are really important to me as a human being. And if you watch the video I put together on the subject, the thing that I say is, I also want to challenge everyone who is, maybe Republican minded and doesn't want to vote for someone who identifies as a Democrat. I want to challenge you by asking what Republican promises our overwhelmingly Republican board is delivering for any of us right now. Because certainly as a resident in rural San Bernardino County, if you try to open a small business, the amount of red tape you see from this county is absolutely insane.
So it's noting that we have 4 of our 5 supervisors are Republican.
It's an overwhelmingly Republican board, right? I think we waste a ton of money as a county. I'm personally annoyed that we're even having the discussion again around Measure W or this FP5 tax. It's now the 3rd attempt to try to repeal it. What I think we should be doing is finding fat in our $10 billion budget. It's $45 million as tax raises. It's actually, in the context of a $10 billion budget, it's actually not that much money. And what I think we should be doing is just finding that money elsewhere in the budget so we don't need this tax. But I think special interest groups, I think our current board is wasting a ton of time and attention arguing both sides of this, where if we could just say, hey, let's save $45 million and cut this tax altogether, everyone would be a lot happier. I mean, on the red tape point, I mean, my goodness, if anyone knows the couple who was trying to open the tavern down here just off of the 18,
Richard and Patty Teachout.
Yeah, I wasn't gonna name names. If anyone knows Richard and Patty Teachout and the struggles they've had trying to open the tavern just down there on the 18, I mean, gosh, it's been 3 years. I think they've talked about hundreds of thousands of dollars. County departments that will come up, say one thing, they'll spend money, another county department comes up and says, oh no, that's wrong, you got to rip it out. Like what conservative principles are we really living up to here? I think that's crazy.
I think the important point here to make is that the criticisms of the current board is not because they're Republican. It's just to point out that political affiliation is not a guarantee of good leadership.
Exactly.
So really what we're asking people in this campaign to do is to kind of judge Graham on his own merits rather than assuming things about him because he's a Democrat.
Correct.
We do have a lot of questions. Actually, Gilbert's follow-up question to the how do you work with people, actually, we probably didn't really answer this probably enough. How would you work with those with opposite views?
Yeah. Well, look, I mean, one example I can point to here is the relationship I've built with Supervisor Rao. So I didn't know her at all a year ago. We led this whole campaign to get the attention of county government. I developed a relationship with her through calling her out for not doing the best job, and have maintained a positive, friendly, professional relationship with her. So being able to forge relationships with people and work together is really part of the skill set that I developed in my professional career. Because actually, one thing we haven't talked about is a lot of that career happened living abroad. So I spent 12 years living and working in London, and in that time, I was traveling and I was working across all kinds of different countries. So really bringing stakeholders together to hammer out a deal, to work together, like that's something that I've done my entire professional career, and something I can do pretty well. Kind of touches on that whole political aspect of what I used to do. It's bringing different stakeholders together. Oftentimes they have really different objectives, and ultimately you got to find a way to meet in the middle, agree on a deal, and then find a path forward to work together and get it done. And I think if we had more of that mindset in government, we'd be in a much better position.
Yeah,
because I think what we see happening, certainly at national government level anyway, is a lot of people just fighting, but not actually making progress on anything.
Yeah, I mean, it's very easy to get people riled up by going to the extreme left or right. And I think what a lot of state and federal politicians forget is that the overlap of what everybody wants is huge, and that's where we need to focus our time. Okay, more questions. Okay. What is your stance on law enforcement and public safety? Currently, the Twin Peaks Sheriff's Station covers 900 square miles with 2 to 3 deputies per shift. Super important question because,
So the thing you're going to hear me talk about a lot is better resource allocation across this county. So I am not a fan of raising taxes for anyone. I think we already pay more than we should, quite frankly, especially seeing how our county wastes so much money. So the thing I'm focused on is how do we take this $10 billion annual budget we have and spend it as efficiently and as effectively as we possibly can. And a big part of that for me is trimming out a lot of the fat and then making sure it goes to departments that really need the resource. Because I agree, the sheriff's department, we spent so much time talking to firefighters the last 6 months who say they are overworked, understaffed, just don't have the resources they need to do their job as well as they possibly can. And these are the departments that need the money more than anything else. So when I go through that report and I see the county spending $3 million on an economic impact study to figure out if they should keep STR revenue in the local communities in which they're located, this is something I've been talking about for 6 months now in terms of I think we should do that. I don't think we need to pay consultants $3 million to give us an answer. I think we should take that $3 million and give it to the Twin Peaks Sheriff's Department, give it to the fire department, right? It's cutting out all the BS in this budget and making sure these departments are as well resourced as they possibly can be. Because I think we all have a vested interest in making sure our fire department is as resourced as it possibly can be, especially if we're up here in the mountain communities. Our weather does seem to be getting more extreme. We all know what is happening with fire insurance, both up here and plenty of areas around the district. We're in a really tough spot right now, and I think we need to do the best job we can managing the resources we have. So that you're gonna hear me talk about that a lot, and yeah. I know it sounds boring, but it's really, really important. This all comes down to how do we take that $10 billion and spend it as well as we possibly can.
Yeah. Ty just has a follow-up comment about challenges to opening a small business. He points out that the burger joint in Crestline has been trying to open for years. And yeah, it's a real problem. There's so much red tape. Do you want to very briefly mention your deferred startup costs idea?
Yeah, so actually there's a few things. So one thing on my agenda that, again, like open book, I want to tell you here's something I really want to try to push through. I want to find ways to make small business easier across San Bernardino County, but in particular in some of these unincorporated and rural districts. So we have a lot of firsthand experience, both looking at stuff ourselves and also talking to residents across mountain communities, desert communities. What you find is the county has, really ostensibly one set of guidelines heavily geared toward life in a city. So when you try to open up a burger joint up here in the mountains and you get told you've got to have 30 feet of clear space behind your disabled parking spot, that might be off a cliff, right? So there's not a lot we can do to change our geography. And what we found is there are exceptions the county can make and has made historically, but it tends to be on a one-off basis, and it's taken business owners months and months and months to try to get an exception. So one of the things that's really important to me on my overall agenda here is seeing if we can find ways to make some of these exceptions more the rules in certain parts of our community. So we can have certain exceptions that become the rule for the mountain communities and for the desert communities. I was actually just on the phone earlier today with an architect in Pioneer Town, which is out in the Joshua Tree area, and they face very similar challenges to what we do. Either the county says you've got to pave over this really historic dirt road that runs through the middle of Pioneer Town, or they'll say, oh, you can't use that building because even though it's really historic, it's not up to current code. And we face exactly the same problems here in the mountain communities. Mark was actually looking at opening a deli in the building that, a friend of ours was trying to open as the Yeti Tavern or Yeti Saloon. That didn't happen. Can't open as a deli. And we have this really cool historic building that's basically derelict now because the county says we can't do anything with it. So one part of my agenda is finding ways to make exceptions for some of these specific communities. Mark also raised a point about just making small business easier across this county. Because it's so hard right now, word gets out to people, and if you're thinking about moving to San Bernardino County to open up a business, I think right now the overwhelming sense is, why would you? Because the county makes your life so hard. And again, I can't make promises on this because ultimately I'm one vote of 5. But if I could, the thing that I would do is really find ways to, in that first, taking a step back, we all know in the first year of opening business, it's your hardest period. It costs a lot of money to get your business open. And what you don't need on top of that is a bunch of BS permit fees, like general fees from the county, red tape, like all the stuff that makes life even harder. What I would do if I could, and what I want to evaluate is, can we defer some of those fees to, say, after a year, once you've had a chance to establish your business? And I think what that does is, if we create a business-friendly environment here that actually means people want to move to San Bernardino County and open a business, then we have more economic diversity, we have more growth, we have more tax revenue to go around and support all the things we all need as residents. And I think if we had supervisors who could actually think that way and have some kind of vision around this, we'd be in a much better spot.
Yeah, for everyone, for anyone who's interested in looking more into this, the set of sort of building codes and business codes and permits and stuff is all wrapped up in what's called the county's development code. If you just Google San Bernardino County Development Code, you'll find it. And just to give you an idea of how crazy it is, and I do want to move on from this topic because we have more questions, but some of the permits that you need to apply for, you literally have to go and do an interview with the Board of Supervisors. The top level of county government, and you as a small business owner, if you want to open a bar or a restaurant or whatever, you have to go and sit and plead your case to the Board of Supervisors. Can you imagine how long it takes to schedule an interview like that?
It's crazy.
It's crazy. And you have to pay thousands of dollars to even go through that process, just that permit. So anyway, we could talk about that forever.
Yeah, this is, I'm passionate about this
Yes.
because it makes life really difficult for all of us up here, and I could talk for hours, but we don't have time.
Yes. Okay, so we're going to move on to the topic of STRs. Ty asks, how do you feel about STRs? I'm aware of several people, for anyone who doesn't know, STRs, short-term rentals, Airbnbs, VRBO, that kind of thing. I'm aware of several people in the community born and raised here that are being priced out of paradise due to rising home costs, as well as investors buying up homes.
Yep.
And I want to do a little bit of moderating wizardry and just weave in Margaret's comment saying, can we send our taxes to the mountain communities instead of the feds and Sacramento? Wishful thinking, just kidding. But these two things do kind of link, because I know that's kind of something that you want to explore
They do.
here.
Okay, so first of all, I've spent a lot of time looking into the STR issue. If you have an extra 10 minutes tonight, tomorrow, whatever, I have a whole video where I go through the county's STR report and give you my analysis and my conclusions on their report.
And just to apologize, if anyone can hear the snow hitting the window outside, like, apologies for that.
We are right on the ridge up in Sky Forest, and the wind really, really rips here. And these are 50-year-old single pane windows, so it's drafty as well. So, okay, high level. I think STRs are an important aspect of tourist economies like the ones we live in, like some of the ones we have in the desert. But I completely agree. I think if they're uncontrolled, then we do see a lot of instances where local residents are getting priced out of the market. So I think what we need to do is find a balanced solution where we have some sensible restrictions on perhaps the number of STRs in a given neighborhood, perhaps the number of STRs that can be owned by a single entity. And what I really mean by that is, I think it's a problem if you have a big corporation owning 50 houses in a residential neighborhood, because high level, I think the best STRs and the most respectful ones are the ones that are owned by individuals, and in particular individuals that have a real connection to the community. I think we all probably know people who own vacation rentals here in other parts of the county or the state. And if you're a local resident who has got a connection to your neighbors, to your neighborhood, if you rent out your house as an STR, you're usually not one of the problem ones, because people know who to call, and because you are a responsible community member, you're kind of on top of the ball. So what's happened at a county level is a lot of people have raised this issue in terms of the proliferation of STRs has had an impact on the availability of long-term rental housing. And what the county did as its solution, I'm pretty disappointed by. Because their solution was to spend money on a set of consultants. There's actually 2 sets of consultants, which basically produced both a report and then an opinion on top of that report. And if you watch the YouTube video, I kind of talk about how how many opportunities there are for the county to manage and massage the messaging that comes out when you have imperfect data, one report, and then an opinion on that report. And basically what the county said was there's not a correlation, therefore there's not a problem, therefore we don't need to do anything about it. I don't agree with the conclusions of this report. The methodology I think was pretty flawed. There's some pretty important data lacking from it. I don't have time to get into it now, but please, if you're interested, watch that video because I have a full-blown analysis of what I think here.
I'm just going to drop the link to that video in
perfect.
the chat.
It's on the homepage. There's a little section of videos, and if you scroll all the way over to the right, I think it's one of the first YouTube videos on there. So I think the issue here is we know there's a problem because residents across the district have complained about it. Residents in the mountain have, residents in the desert have, Big Bear has. And I think one thing that's important to know here as well is we can't even implement a one-size-fits-all approach to management of STRs across the district because some communities, such as some communities in Big Bear, are structurally different to communities we have over on this side of the mountains. But because so many residents have complained about it, because we know people who have been priced out of the market, I think it's incumbent upon the county to do something about it. And my solution is, instead of paying consultants a bunch of money to write a report which says you don't have to do anything, let's look at some other areas that have managed their STR situation pretty well. So Riverside County and Palm Springs is one I always go back to because they had a huge proliferation of STRs. They had to implement some legislation, and in general, it's worked out pretty well. They have some pretty strict code enforcement. They have restrictions on how many STRs can be in a neighborhood, how many can be owned by a single entity, and in general, they've managed their problem pretty well. So then the second part to that question is, what do we do with the revenue from STRs? So right now it goes into what's called the county's general fund, which is basically a giant pot of county money that they can do whatever they want with. It's a big part of that $10 billion budget. I've been saying for months, like literally since last year, that I think fundamentally what we should be doing with the revenue the county makes from STRs is reinvesting that back in the local neighborhoods that have them. Because if you're a resident here in the mountains, we have some specific challenges we need to address here, whether it's filling in all the potholes that get caused by winter, investing more in our local sheriff's department, investing more in code enforcement, because the more STRs we have, the more problems we're going to have, and we need more resource to be able to deal with them. Same thing goes for STRs in the desert. And I personally get disappointed when I see the county spending $3 million on a study to figure out if they should even do that. Because fundamentally, I think we all kind of know it's the right thing to do. I think all the residents want it, and because the county doesn't have uniform STR policies across the county, they only allow them in the mountain desert regions. I actually think it's totally unfair that all the revenue goes out of our local communities and into the county's general fund. I really feel strongly we got to keep it here. So again, I can't make promises on whether or not I can absolutely deliver that, but I'm going to try.
And it's not unprecedented to allocate finances from the county to a specific region. So each of the supervisors has a discretionary fund that they are allowed to use for projects and initiatives in their own district. So, putting that money aside is not an unprecedented move.
No, there are mechanics to do it. Like it is doable, and I want to try to do it.
Yeah. And yeah, just to kind of add to Graham's point, that money can be used for a whole bunch of different stuff. So Gilbert's question, pointing out that the Twin Peaks Sheriff Station covers 900 square miles. Some of that funds could go to, beefing up code enforcement. It could go to the question about, small businesses. It could go to supporting local businesses.
You name it.
Community garden. Margaret's coming about.
We have plenty of need in our communities here. And because we are the ones who have some of the burden of managing the STRs, dealing with the code complaints, all the negative stuff that they do bring, and they do bring lots of positive stuff too, right? I want to be really balanced about this.
Yeah, we couldn't survive. Our tourist economy could not survive without them. Let's be honest.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, I think the money that they generate should stay in the local communities that have them.
Yeah. Ty very helpfully, it's not exactly pretty, but I can't recommend enough window plastic to seal out the wind. Helps with heat retention and keeps draft out. We have thought about it. The problem with these windows is there's nowhere to stick it because the frame is wooden and the plastic doesn't stick to it. But yeah, something definitely to look into.
This is an old. I love this house, but it's old and drafty and needs a lot of work, which we don't have time for right now because the campaign is in full tilt mode at the moment. But
Yeah.
we'll get to it one of these years.
Yeah, we'll just have to keep busy and hope that generates enough heat to block
Yeah.
out the wind. Okay, I don't see any more questions in the chat. Let me just have a quick scroll back and make sure that I haven't missed any. While I do that, do you want to just show people the last slide so they know how to like contact us? And
Yeah. Here, let me scroll over here. Give me just 1 second. Yeah, I think sessions like this are the best. We don't even need the presentation.
yeah,
So we'll put this up at the last side of the presentation, which is just kind of the way to keep informed and keep up to date on what's going on.
Ty,
So-
I know, double-sided tape. I know. We just haven't had time.
What's that?
Double-sided tape for the
Oh
plastic
yeah,
around the
yeah,
windows.
I know.
I mean, I really
Yeah.
want to go around and putty them all again. I really want to do all that because
Okay, so on the election, the primary is March 5th. It's really coming up. If you don't have them already, the ballots, if you're already registered to vote, will be dropping in the mail shortly. I checked our PO box yesterday; they weren't there, but Becky, who runs our local post office, said they have started coming and they will be here soon.
God, I love that.
So if you're already registered registered to vote, you'll get a mail-in ballot soon. Again, if you are at all interested in what we said tonight, I would be really grateful to have your vote and have your support. The most important thing that people can do right now is really just help spread the word. Let all your friends and family know, particularly if you're in the rural communities here in the mountains or in the desert. I'm really the only candidate running who can really lead this place with all of us in mind. So yeah, primaries on March 5th. Vote early if you can, just because
Yeah.
on March 5th we might be snowed in and we might not be able to get to a
Yeah.
polling place.
Don't wait until March 5th.
Correct.
Like, don't wait.
And if you're not registered to vote yet, this primary is really important. So with this seat in particular, the way it works is if someone, which would be our current supervisor, Rao, gets 50+% on March 5th, then this race is over. It doesn't even go to November. So really we need as many people to get out and show their support in March as possible, so that we take it to a runoff in November. So please make sure, if you're not registered to vote already, it's a really easy process to sign up. Go to vote.ca.gov.
I've dropped that link in the chat. So.
Okay, perfect. The link is in there. Register to vote, and I don't know if you register now, if you'll still receive a mail-in ballot, or if you've got to go on election day. That one I'm not sure of,
Do
but
it
I think
anyway.
you have until February 20th to register to vote. So you
Yeah.
still have a little bit of time.
Margaret asked the question, is March 5th only for Dems? No, it is not.
No.
This is a nonpartisan seat. Everybody votes at the same time.
Yep.
California has what's called jungle primaries, which means that the top two candidates, the two candidates that receive the most votes go through to the general election, which is in November. However, our county is different. This race, if one of the candidates gets more than 50%, it doesn't even go to the general election. So
Yeah.
if you don't vote in this election in the primary, you might not get a chance to do it in November. So no, Margaret, March 5th is not for Dems. It's for absolutely everybody.
Correct. And whatever ballot you receive, whether it's Democrat, nonpartisan, no party preference, Republican, this seat, because it's nonpartisan, will be on your ballot. So everyone votes on this seat.
Yeah. I just want to make one quick point. You will see Graham's name on the ballot. If you go to the voter information guide, however, you will not see a bio for Graham. You will not see a
Correct.
candidate statement. The reason for that is that to put a candidate statement in the voter information guide, the county charges you $17,000. That is money that we can use for so many other things. And, we chose strategically not to put it in there because, first of all, nobody reads the voter information guide. Statistically, that's not true.
Yeah.
Some people read the voter information guide, but statistically, not very many people read the voter information guide. Plus, we wanted to reach out. I think the statement is like 300 words, maybe less. I don't know.
Maybe 200. It's not.
Maybe
it's not that
200.
much.
It's not a lot, and it's an extremely large amount of money to spend on something like that. So we are investing those resources in other things, like sessions like this, in-person events, social media, websites, mailers, all that kind of stuff. So don't be concerned if you don't see Graham's bio candidate statement in the voter information guide.
Yeah, that was a conscious choice to allocate that $17,000 to spend on areas we can control, because a bunch of independent research suggests that so many people don't even read that guide. And I am certainly not a fan of giving this county any more of I'm not going to call it, it's kind of hard-earned money, hard-raised money than
Well, I mean, we've had so many
can.
We've had so many small donations from people that it's their hard-earned money, and we've been very conscious to not waste that, because it's very easy in a campaign like this to waste money, and we've been very careful and very strategic about how we spend people's donations,
100%,
which we are incredibly grateful for.
So, of course, on that note, if you are at all in a position to help support the campaign, anything is gratefully received. It does rely on donations from individuals like you. Like I said, we're not taking any money from corporations, from property developers, from sitting politicians. So it's really important, and anything makes a difference.
We're not taking contributions from special interest groups that want to incorporate Lake Gregory. We're not taking we're not taking donations from mega church builders. We're not taking donations from anybody that has an ulterior motive. We are being very picky about that.
Exactly. So please consider if you're in a position to do so. In the meantime, the most helpful thing you can do is just spread the word. Let everyone know that this election is happening on March 5th, because so many people aren't even aware there's an election right now. And please send them the info for the campaign.
Yep.
So if you found out about the sessions, you're probably already following on social media, you've been to the website, but the details for both of those are on this slide. In the meantime, I think that's probably it for this session. So
I do have one other direct plea, which is that a lot of community Facebook groups, which are a very great way for us to reach people, don't allow us to post because it is political by nature. So even though it's about local issues and things that we think people of any political affiliation will be interested in, these groups have sensible rules in place to stop that kind of discussion. Correct. So if you are a member of any of those local Facebook groups, please, without causing any trouble or drama, we don't want you to get into trouble, but if you can find a way to politely and respectfully mention Graham in any of those groups and direct them to our website or our social media channels, we would really appreciate it, because it is difficult for us to reach people through Facebook, ironically, because of rules around political posts and things like that. And I apologize, Ty has a question about, we have time. If other people need to drop off, that's totally fine. But we do have one more question. I'm going to go back. How about county manpower? Snowplow operators are seasonal, late work, long hours, for frankly not enough pay for what they do. Can't agree with you more on that, because those guys work their asses off. I was asked if I wanted to work for the county doing snow removal, but it's only seasonal. What do we think about that?
So one thing, this came from a discussion with a Crestline resident a few months ago. Like, another thing that has been highlighted to us is a lot of the plow operators are not necessarily local to the mountain, and aren't always even that familiar with driving the plow equipment in snow, because there'll be heavy equipment operators from down the mountain who know how to operate some of the machinery, but not necessarily are familiar with the specific type or with our local neighborhoods up here. As a general point, I think the more we can do to get our local community involved in county government, I think the better the service is going to be for everybody. Because certainly one thing that came out of the snowstorm experience last year is so much of what actually got done was done by volunteers up the mountain, because it's local mountain residents who know how to operate in the mountain communities. So I don't know off the top of my head if there's an easy solution to how we go about implementing that. But if we can find ways to make it economically viable to have local mountain employees working for the county in services like this, where it's really important to have local knowledge, then I'm all in favor of finding ways to do that. I don't want to tell you I have a solution baked right now, because this is the first time I've thought about it. It's probably a better solution than we have right now, but it's going to take talking to people about it, figuring out what we can actually do in order to make it happen. But high level, I think it's something we should try to make happen.
Yeah. Ty very kindly points out that we can post our videos on Rim Rants and Raves and Crestline Happenings 2. Those are his pages. So yeah.
Amazing. Thank you.
We will be very respectful of the group. We're only going to post stuff that is of interest to the members of that group. Where, as we talked about earlier, we are not interested in divisive, partisan, political topics. So you won't see any of that from us. It will be disaster prep, short-term rentals, unincorporated resident representation, that kind of stuff. So, yeah, thank you very much for opening up your group to our post.
Thank you indeed.
Yep. Okay, I don't see any more questions.
All right, Evan. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to join this evening. Again, just please help spread the word, tell your friends and family, and then in the meantime, we're here if you need anything. You can find us on our website. Our email address is on there. We respond to comments and direct messages on social media, and there's a voicemail phone number on the website as well. So, however you need to contact us, we are here for you.
Yep.
So we'll let you get back to your evening. Thank you so much for joining this evening, and hope to see you around the mountain soon.